Discover how an unsung hero with no degree amazingly transformed everything in just seconds. Mike tightened the last bolt on the rusted pickup truck before him, sweat trickling down his brow. It was another long day at the shop, another reminder of his place in this small Nebraska town, one that had never felt as substantial as the curve of a tire. As he wiped his hands on a faded rag, a thought flickered like a dying bulb. Was this truly all there was for him? He longed for something more, something outside the grease-stained walls that felt like his cage. It gnawed at him, that dream of breaking the cycle of struggle for his family. Determination battled doubt in his chest. An affluent customer walked in, his tailored suit a stark contrast to the rundown garage. Mike swallowed hard. He envied the man with every polished shoe on his feet. Could he ever rise to such heights? "You're good with your hands, just keep it simple, right?" the customer quipped, oblivious to the barb piercing deep into Mike's pride. It hurt to be seen merely as a mechanic, just another cog in a world that overlooked him. But unease gave way to a strange clarity when a complex mechanical issue confronted him, a broken part needing ingenuity, not just brute force. As Mike knelt down, inspiration struck. Grabbing a piece of scrap metal, he began to sketch a design, almost instinctually. The solution flowed from him like water, and for the first time, he felt more than just a mechanic. He felt like an engineer. Every turn of the wrench seemed to clear a fog that had hung over him for too long. Yet, as this creativity surged, so did fear. Thoughts spiraled. Who was he to dare in a world dominated by those with degrees? What if his idea proved futile? A gnawing anxiety gripped his stomach. His family's future depended on him, and failure now felt imminent. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Brad, his former classmate, who now ran a local engineering firm, always had that sneer on his face, the one that had mocked Mike's lack of an education. A confrontation was coming. With doubts creeping in, Mike glanced at his children's drawings taped to the shop's wall, a reminder of why he fought so hard. Heart pounding, he noticed the box in the corner of the garage, covered in dust. It was his father's. But could it hold the answer to his questions? Inside lay sketches and documents of an invention his father had poured his heart into, but never received recognition for. The realization of betrayal washed over him, the bitterness of forgotten dreams igniting a fire in his gut. Mike gritted his teeth. This was more than just his battle. It was a legacy fight. As the day of the contest loomed, his breath quickened. His father's spirit pressed against him, urging him to rise. Tension wrapped around him like a vice. What if he failed? What if he let down his family? The unknown felt like a dark pit, swallowing his resolve. He stood at a crossroads, desperation clawing at his throat. Would he dare to challenge Brad, his own self-doubt, and the haunting legacy that had shadowed him for too long? As Mike clenched the sketches in his hand, the gravity of this moment became a consuming pressure. This was his chance, a desperate last chance. Would he seize it, or succumb to the weight of history? In the soft glow of the fading garage lights, Mike stood frozen, a sketch clasped tightly in his hands. Doubts swirled like dust motes in the air around him. He could almost hear his father's voice, urging him to take action, spurring him to embrace this moment fully rather than retreat into the shadows of self-doubt. As the memories of working alongside his father flooded back, he felt a surge of determination rise in him, a silent promise to uphold the legacy that had been snuffed out too soon. With a heavy sigh, Mike shook himself free from self-pity and moved toward the workbench. The tools scattered across the surface felt familiar, comforting even. He needed to channel his anxiety into something productive. As he examined the piece of scrap metal he had set aside, he recalled the intricacies of his father's designs, inspired not just by the technology, but by the conviction behind each concept. This was not just about repairing cars. It was about innovation, the spark of ingenuity that could defy the confines of his perceived limitations. Every stroke of his pencil on the sketch pad became a step toward liberation. His heart raced, and with each idea that spilled onto the page, he built confidence. He divined solutions as if the answers lay dormant within him all along, waiting for the right push to emerge. This machine could change everything, not just in the shop, but in his life, for his family. The thought ignited a fierce sense of purpose. It wasn't only a contest, it was a declaration of his identity. Then came the uncertainty of presenting his creation to Brad. Their rivalry was personal, a festival of past grievances and insecurities flooding back. Brad's frequent jibes about Mike's lack of formal education pierced deeper every time. But now, Mike felt a glimmer of defiance stirring within him. The notion gnawed at Mike. Could the disapproving eyes of his former classmate be transformed into acknowledgement? Could he, through sheer will and creativity, reclaim a space for himself in a world that often felt inhospitable? Night fell, and the garage took on an almost reverent silence as Mike immersed himself in work. Time warped. What began as hours of labor turned into productive obsession. With every sketch refined and prototype built, self-doubt battled against exhilaration. This was it. The moment was no longer a distant what-if. It was becoming a tangible I can. Moments of clarity broke through his doubts, revealing that he had more depth than he realized, that the chasm between him and those with degrees could be bridged by his innovative insight and hands-on experience. There was power in that understanding, a light that illuminated possibilities far greater than he had ever deemed achievable. As the contest day neared, Mike held his breath each morning when he arrived at the shop. The sketches sprawled across his work area reminded him of what was at stake. He could feel the weight of his father's dreams resting on his shoulders, with each decision pressing down harder. The realization struck him. This was bigger than just winning. This was a chance to rewrite a narrative that had been dictated by others for too long. He would not only confront Brad, he would confront the narrative of his own worth. The moment was approaching when he could stand before an audience, an assembly of peers who had dismissed him, and unveil not just an innovation but a piece of himself. And then it hit him. The looming question. Could he push through the barrier of inadequacy and truly believe that he belonged among competitors with years of formal training? Or would he allow the fear of failure to drown out the emerging voice of his newfound potential? As the sun rose on the day of the contest, Mike felt the world around him shift. The moment of reckoning had finally arrived. It was time to stand tall and face the judgment that awaited him. The early morning air was thick with tension as Mike drove to the contest, the engine's low hum merging seamlessly with the anxious thrum of his heart. Each mile felt like a countdown, a march toward destiny that left him oscillating between eagerness and dread. He clutched the steering wheel tightly, each grip reflecting the resolve simmering beneath his anxious exterior. Pulling into the event parking lot, he parked with a deep breath, grounding himself momentarily amidst the chaotic atmosphere. Competitors milled about, their confident mannerisms on display, a different breed of ambition radiating from them. Mike felt like an outsider, an interloper in a world polished by educational accolades and rich family legacies. But this time, he would not let that dissuade him. The memories of late nights spent tirelessly working in the garage punctured through his mental fog, reigniting his determination. As he moved toward the registration area, Mike's heart began to race. The acrid scent of motor oil and the distant hum of machinery tugged at him, making the shop feel as though it had beckoned him here. He approached the sign-in desk, where a familiar face loomed. Brad stood there, a self-satisfied smirk dancing across his lips. The sight of him sent a shiver down Mike's spine, an immediate confrontation with his insecurities. "Look who decided to show up," Brad taunted, crossing his arms, the arrogance in his posture stark. Mike could feel his confidence teetering like a tightrope walker just inches away from falling. Yet he forced himself to look Brad in the eye. "I'm here to change the game." Brad's mocking laughter rang out, but it didn't pierce deeply, as it once would have. Instead, it served as fuel. The moment sparked a shift in Mike. He stood taller, a realization dawning that Brad's words could only hold him down if he allowed them to. With the contest rules coursing through his thoughts, Mike sought out a quiet corner, with sketches and prototypes sprawled across the shaded table. As competitors flooded the space, he tore his gaze away from their confident exchanges and focused on the work in front of him. The sketches transformed into a mental blueprints of possibilities. Each element held a piece of his father's legacy, each line infused with personal narrative, a testimony to his quest. Glimmers of insight began to crystallize. With each passing moment, Mike recognized the contrast between his hands-on experience and the theoretical knowledge his competitors possessed. It had taken years of practice, trial, and error for him to discover the ethos of true craftsmanship. The humbling but invigorating truth took hold. He possessed a depth of understanding that those with formal training often overlooked, a raw instinct to innovate through necessity rather than theory. As he approached the judging panel, adrenaline surged through him. His hands trembled, but this time it was not only from fear, it was from anticipation. Right now, amid the flashing lights and scrutinizing eyes, he wasn't just thinking about winning or losing. He was living his father's legacy, vowing to honor it beyond the realms of traditional standards. Next up, Mike Johnson. The announcer called, jolting him from his thoughts. The gaze of the collective crowd locked onto him, and he felt every heartbeat in the room. Now was his moment, a moment suspended in time where he could define himself, not by others' limitations, but by his own potential. Taking a deep breath, he stepped forward, ready to unveil the machine that embodied not just innovation, but also a piece of himself molded in the fires of perseverance. Would this declaration of his worth shatter the narrative believed by many, including Brad? Or would he find himself confronting yet another doubt hiding in the shadows of his mind? The crowd's chatter faded as Mike stepped forward, the spotlight washing over him like a surge of electricity. The weight of expectation settled on his shoulders, but instead of feeling crushed, he embraced it. He approached the judges, their expressions a mixture of intrigue and skepticism. He could sense their doubts. They were all too aware of the conventional pathways to success, degrees, connections, polished presentations. But Mike wasn't there to conform. He was there to disrupt. Shifting his attention to the machine before him, Mike sharpened his focus. It wasn't just a collection of metal and parts. It was tangible proof of countless hours spent tinkering, problem-solving, and innovating. This was his art, a piece of his soul crafted through sweat and unwavering perseverance. He had poured everything he had into this. Today I redefine what it means to innovate, he thought, rallying an inner resolve stronger than ever. With a clear voice, he began his pitch, articulating not just the technical specifications, but the story behind each innovation. Each feature was a lesson learned, a challenge faced. He detailed how he adapted each component based on his experiences, each adaptation echoing a truth he had discovered through years of trial and error. That knowledge isn't always taught. It's often found in the school of life. As he spoke, he could see the judges' expressions change. Intrigued brows furrowed deeper as they began to see beyond the conventional parameters. He introduced a unique aspect of his design that no one else had dared to explore, a feature that originated from his necessity-driven experiences. It was the key that would set him apart, a testament to his understanding of real-world applications and problem-solving. The moment of truth arrived as he finished his presentation, the silence thick with contemplation. But Mike was no longer gripped by doubt. He had laid bare not just his innovation, but the essence of who he was, a storyteller who knew how to weave technical prowess with genuine passion. It wasn't just about winning, it was about proving to himself that he could transcend perceived limitations. "Thank you, Mike," one of the judges finally remarked, breaking the stillness. "Your approach is refreshing, and you've certainly brought something unique to the table." As he backed away, a wave of adrenaline coursed through him. Had he done enough? Did he really shift the narrative? He knew that his work alone wouldn't guarantee victory. The judging was still subjective and unpredictable. Returning to the sidelines, Mike caught Brad's eye and felt a sense of calm wash over him. The jeering rivalry that had once intimidated him now faded into the background. He had realized that this rupture between himself and Brad wasn't just about competition. It was about self-acceptance. Mike had stepped into the light, and regardless of the outcome, he had found an undeniable strength within himself. In that moment, he began to understand a fundamental truth. Success was not measured solely by external validation, but by the courage to pursue his passion against all odds. But as he stood there letting the adrenaline subside, he noticed Brad muttering something to another competitor, pointing in his direction with an expression of disdain. The old familiar feelings of fear began to creep in, reminding him just how precarious his position still was. Mike sensed that perhaps this encounter would lead to something more than just a contest. It felt like the beginning of a deeper confrontation, one that would test everything he had just begun to understand about himself. What was Brad planning, and how would Mike confront this challenge while maintaining the momentum he had built? The atmosphere buzzed with anticipation as Mike retreated from the stage, his heart racing with lingering adrenaline and self-doubt. He had exposed his vision, but the seeds of his insecurity began to sprout again. Was his innovation truly enough to withstand scrutiny, or was he still vulnerable to the harsh judgments of those who held traditional metrics of success? As he leaned against a cool concrete wall at the back of the venue, Mike took a moment to breathe, grounding himself. The cacophony of conversations surrounded him, yet within that noise a singular focus emerged, a desire to prove not just to the judges, but to himself that he was worthy. His mind raced, formulating strategies, questioning whether he should confront Brad directly or allow his work to speak for itself. Mike glanced over at Brad, who stood with a group exuding confidence and disparaging laughter as they observed the competitors like predators sizing up their prey. Something inside Mike ignited, a fierce resolve. What had once intimidated him now felt like fuel for his transformation. He acknowledged the fear that whispered deceitful thoughts, that perhaps this was a fight he would inevitably lose, but in that recognition, Mike discovered an unsettling truth about himself. He was standing on the precipice of change, ready to leap into an uncertain future. He just had to recalibrate his approach. Inspired, he decided to use the moment to channel his fears into constructive action. Taking a deep breath, he stepped forward, embracing the opportunity to engage not just with the competitors, but with the scrutiny of Brad. Wasn't it the rivalry that had spurred him into innovation in the first place? As he approached, the laughter dwindled, replaced by a tense energy. He locked eyes with Brad, who met his gaze with condescension. "What's the matter, Mike? Did the spotlight dazzle you? Or did the judges see you for what you truly are?" Every taunt from Brad felt like a wave crashing against the resolved fortress Mike had built over the last few weeks. Instead of crumbling, he chose to reflect that energy back, not as animosity but as a silent assertion of his newfound confidence. "You know, all that talk about real achievements, it's the first step that defines success. I've taken mine today." The brightness of his response shocked not only Brad, but also Mike himself. He realized there was a power in honesty, not just to others, but to himself. Brad's sneers were no longer an obstacle, but a mere echo of insecurity projecting onto him. "Good luck with that," Brad scoffed, turning away, but the exchange stayed with Mike, reverberating a different kind of strength. As he walked away, Mike felt lighter, the tension loosening its grip on him. He had chosen confrontation not just for the sake of pride, but as a catalyst for his growth. He understood now that conflict didn't diminish him. It provided an avenue for clarity and action. Back in the thrumming crowd, he observed his competitors, acknowledging their struggles and stories, realizing that every pitch held a journey of personal discovery, just like his own. What started as a contest of ingenuity had transformed into a richer landscape of human experience. Mike felt compelled to explore the possibilities of collaboration rather than competition. But as he began to approach a fellow competitor with similar aspirations, his thoughts turned to Brad. Was there a way to change the narrative of antagonism into something constructive? The challenge brewed in his mind, and he felt that perhaps a different approach could redefine not only his relationship with Brad, but also set a new tone for his own professional trajectory. With renewed determination to navigate this dynamic landscape, Mike was on the cusp of redefining his next move. Would he risk vulnerability in hopes of finding common ground, or remain anchored by the fear of rivalry? The decision awaited him, imbued with the potential for not just personal development, but for reshaping his understanding of true success in an unforgiving world. Mike's initial surge of confidence radiated through him, but the euphoria swiftly gave way to a simmering tension. The moment he engaged, Brad had unleashed a mixture of excitement and trepidation. What if confronting his rival had merely put a target on his back, igniting further ridicule rather than fostering understanding? He sought a quieter space away from the pulsating center of the crowd. As he leaned against a less crowded wall, he eyed the far corner, where the soft glow of fluorescent lights cast sharp shadows on the floor. It was a moment tucked away from scrutiny, yet the silence enveloping him felt laden with questions requiring answers. What had he truly achieved by speaking up? Would he remain trapped within his own fear of inadequacy, or could this newfound resolve truly lead to something transformative? Reflecting on his past experiences, Mike understood that his uncertainty typically had roots entwined in external validation. Yet something today felt distinct, a tentative yet palpable sense of self-worth. The notion bubbled within him that perhaps reinforcement could sprout from genuine collaborations. Taking a deep breath, Mike mentally shifted gears. Instead of focusing solely on Brad, he could extend that courage to the others present, especially those who shared a similar enthusiasm for innovation. As he scanned the crowd, he spotted a competitor, Sarah, known for her resourceful approach in combining technical skills with aesthetic finesse. Would she be open to a collaboration? His feet moved before his mind could fully anticipate the approach, and before he knew it, he was standing in front of her. Sarah had captured a group's attention with her pitch, illustrating not only her concept, but embodying passion that echoed through her words. "Hey, Sarah," he began, feeling the familiar tinge of self-doubt creep in. "I was really impressed by your presentation. I think we could create something impactful together if you're interested." The surprise on her face tweaked the corner of his mouth upward. "You think so? I'd be keen to hear your ideas. What did you have in mind?" Their dialogue flowed, thoughts weaving together like threads, bringing to light an array of possibilities that sparked between them. Each suggestion built upon the last, guiding them toward a greater vision. It was thrilling for Mike to experience this shift. He wasn't competing against others. He could stand beside them as a counterpart. Yet with each passing minute, the shadows of Brad's mocking voice lingered in his head. "You think you can just integrate into the circle?" echoed as a refrain, challenging his newly found confidence. Did he possess the right blend of audacity and ingenuity to make this collaboration successful? What if Sarah reconsidered and chose not to team up due to his perceived shortcomings? Despite this, Mike anchored himself to the conversations they were weaving. A new energy enveloped him, unmistakably leaving less room for those nagging doubts. The group around Sarah animatedly discussed the technicalities while he contributed with insights about user engagement and market strategies. They were dynamically creating and elevating each step of the project. As they wrapped up brainstorming, Sarah turned to him, her expression sincere. "I'm really excited to explore this with you. It feels like we both push each other to think differently." For the first time, Mike felt the affirmation of collaboration feed into his self-image, planting seeds of confidence where there had been only fertile ground for fear. But just as he relished this moment, a familiar figure strolled through the crowd. Brad, eyes alight with mockery. He could feel the prickling stare penetrating through his bravado, deflecting his enlightenment. This was uncharted territory. "Look who's attempting to play nice now," Brad called out, the condescension thick in his tone. "Have you forgotten that competition isn't about teamwork? This is survival of the fittest." Mike's heart raced. The care he had nurtured with Sarah felt at stake. Would he slide back into the shadows to quell the hostility, or would he stand tall against the storm? Determined to respond, Mike realized this next reaction could solidify his transformation. The moment of truth was approaching. Should he engage further with Brad, risking the bridge he just built, or let this schoolyard bully continue to ripple through his sense of self? Clenching his fists and taking a deep breath, he prepared to confront not only Brad, but also the fears lurking behind his own bravado. The choice loomed large, impregnated with consequence. Mike's body tensed as he turned to face Brad, his former rival's taunts hanging in the air like a thick fog. The exhilaration from his earlier conversation with Sarah felt fragile against this sudden influx of old fears. He needed to find the right words. This wasn't just about defending himself. It was about channeling his growth and newfound sense of self-esteem into action. "Brad," he said, his voice steadier than he felt, "it's not just about competition. What if working together helps us both? Collaboration can lead to innovation that one of us alone might not achieve." Brad's laughter was sharp, cutting through the air. "Innovation? More like a recipe for disaster. You don't have what it takes to run with the big dogs, Mike. You're just fooling yourself." Those words stabbed at Mike's self-image, but they also lit a fire within him. Why was it so easy for Brad to dismiss him? His past wasn't a prison sentence. It could be a source of strength. Mike shut his eyes for a moment, envisioning the small victories he had won in his journey, the collaborative ideas flowing with Sarah, thriving on a foundation of acceptance rather than rejection. "I'm ready to challenge that idea, Brad," he continued, his voice firm. "If I fail, at least I know I tried, and that counts for something. Can you say the same?" Sometimes the bravest choice is to step away from being right and embrace the possibility of learning. The crowd around them fell silent, the tension punctuating the air. Brad stared at him, incredulity mixing with disdain. For a fleeting moment, Mike thought he could crack through that hardened exterior, perhaps even rekindle a shadow of camaraderie buried beneath layers of rivalry. But then, Brad smirked, regaining his composure. "Look at you, trying to play the hero." Brad sneered. "All this tepid talk of collaboration? You'll never rise up if you cling to the coattails of others." An unsettling rush of vulnerability surged within Mike. Was he really only imitating growth to mask his failings? But as he stood there, he felt the weight of Sarah's encouraging words still echoing in his mind. He recalled the excitement of those creative dialogues, how they hadn't just driven him forward, but also cast aside the lingering doubts of inadequacy. "Maybe you don't see it yet, but we all responded to different triggers in our careers," Mike said, his breathing intense but steadying. "Just because you choose to remain a lone wolf doesn't mean we have to. It's about embracing each other's strengths, rather than tearing each other down." The crowd slowly began to murmur, the energy shifting as some nodded in agreement with Mike's sentiment. He felt the tide turning slightly in his favor, yet he knew it wasn't over. Brad's facade of confidence wavered, revealing a flicker of uncertainty. "You think that can save a failing project?" Mike held firm. "No, but it can create new ones that succeed." As the tension crackled, pushing back against Brad's relentless disdain, Mike could feel the support of those around him coalescing into a force that bolstered his own resolve. Yet, even in this moment of defiance, Mike sensed something deeper lurking. This confrontation was more than just a duel of words. It was a test of his very foundation. Could he sustain this assertive stride toward self-assuredness, or would he stumble back into the shadows of self-doubt? "Can you even face the reality of collaboration, Brad?" Mike pressed, his heart racing. "Or are you too intimidated?" The words hung suspended in the air like a precipice, daring both of them to take the leap. For Mike, this was it. The crux of his evolution hinged on this clash. He had taken his first step into the light, but would it illuminate his path, or would he find himself tumbling back into darkness? As Brad clenched his jaw and the crowd's energy shifted unpredictably, Mike realized he needed to prepare for whatever response was coming next. The fear of retaliation mingled with the electric thrill of his growth, and in that precarious moment, he felt the profound weight of his choices rippling through his core. What was he willing to face next? The confrontation with Brad could either forge him into a confident leader or pull him back into the depths of uncertainty. The time had come to confront the true nature of his transformation and the risks it entailed. Brad's smirk faltered, and the silence that followed felt pregnant with possibilities. Mike's chest tightened. Did he truly have the fortitude to challenge not just Brad, but the very perception of himself that had once boxed him in? "The truth is, Mike," Brad said, his voice low and edged with venom, "you've always been a shadow. How can you expect anyone to believe in your grand ideas when you can't even see yourself clearly?" Those words landed with a weight that made Mike's stomach twist. Was he merely a shadow? He wrestled with the idea, teetering on the brink of frustration and resolve. Taking a breath, he gathered the jagged pieces of his confidence. "No, I'm no longer defined by someone else's expectations," he replied, the conviction in his tone surprising even him. Around him, the murmurs of the crowd shifted like a tide, some hesitant, others leaning into Mike's words as if sensing an undercurrent of truth. It was his moment to seize, a chance to redefine his narrative right before their eyes. "Let's talk about results, Brad," he pressed on. "You thrive in theory, hiding behind experience. But when was the last time you let anyone in? Your project is failing not because of collaboration, but because you've surrounded yourself with barriers. You've built a fortress of solitude that isolates rather than inspires." Mike felt a rush of adrenaline as he spoke, the wave of his earlier self-doubt morphing into something fierce and undeniable. This wasn't just a defense against Brad anymore. It was a reclamation of his own narrative, one where he wasn't just an underdog but a valuable player in his own right. As he delivered the lines, he could see that stir of realization flicker in the eyes of his peers. Doubts crept in like shadows between the words. Was he truly ready to dismantle the structures that had shaped his existence? For a moment, Mike felt untethered, dancing on the precipice of change. What if he failed? His palms grew sweaty, and the echo of Brad's earlier jabs vibrated in his head. Yet standing here, he could also sense a latent power emerging from within him. This wasn't just about him anymore. It was about paving a new way forward, not just for himself, but for those who had supported him silently from the very beginning. "Let's workshop it," Mike suggested, his voice steady and challenged the crowd's energy. "You and I, side by side. Let's combine our ideas and see what happens. Rather than crumbling under pressure, let's use it as a catalyst." Brad's laughter cut deep once again, an obstinate refusal to yield. "You think a couple of brainstorming sessions will remedy a sinking ship? It's laughable." "Here's what's laughable, Brad," Mike retorted, the fervor bubbling inside him. "What's laughable is letting fear dictate your path. It's time to put those archaic views to the test. It's time to face our insecurities head-on and find out what we can achieve together." The energy in the atmosphere shifted perceptibly. The murmurs grew louder, their interest peaked. It was like tossing a stone into a still pond and watching the ripples expand, reaching out to others who had suppressed their own ideas and voices. Brad blinked, his moment of bravado cracking, and even he seemed to sense the tremor of change. But instead of relenting, he squared his shoulders and narrowed his gaze. "You're either going to drown in the tide or learn to swim, Mike. Can you really sink or swim?" With his heart pounding, Mike felt clarity wash over the chaos. It dawned on him that he was okay with the risk. It was time to embrace his conviction with unwavering strength. "Thank you for the challenge, Brad. Challenge means growth, and I'm ready to swim. Are you willing to sink with me?" With that question hanging heavy in the air, Mike realized he had stepped decisively into uncharted territory. His transformation hinged not only on inner resolve but on strategic choices that could invigorate his career or lead him down an even sharper fall. But deep within lay the thrill of potential, simmering and waiting to burst forth. What terrified him was no longer the possibility of failure. It was the chance of finding strength he never knew was there. And as eyes turned expectantly from him to Brad, he knew the next move was crucial. Would this confrontation with Brad become the catalyst for true collaboration, or would it solidify a rivalry he was desperate to dismantle? The moment was poised for a decision that would irrevocably shape the course of his professional life. The tension in the air was palpable, like the buzzing of electricity before a storm. Mike stood tall, heart racing as he locked eyes with Brad. He had invited a challenge, but now the enormity of what lay ahead crashed down upon him. It was a realization, not just of his own fears, but of the steep slope of vulnerability he had voluntarily climbed. This was no longer about mere words. It was a defining moment in his life. The silence stretched long enough that he could feel the shifts in the crowd, their uncertainty almost echoing his own. Were they waiting for him to falter? Did they hope for him to back down or collapse under the weight of his ambition? A smirk, almost involuntarily, tugged at the corner of his mouth as he embraced the moment. "Are you scared, Brad?" Mike's voice broke the silence, an edge of amusement shading his tone. "You've made it clear that you're the king of this castle, but what happens when the peasant refuses to bow?" He could see the anger bubbling beneath Brad's facade. That realization sparked a flicker of joy within him. This was power. He was no longer the shadow that Brad claimed he was. He had asserted his position, and the world was watching. Brad's eyes narrowed, fury and disbelief mingling there. "You've got nerve coming here, thinking you can just turn the tides with a few words. You really believe you've got what it takes to pull this project back from the brink?" His arrogance rang shallow, even to his own ears. "Why wouldn't I?" Mike shot back. "Because I'm the shadow, as you so aptly put it? Or is it simply that I dare to think differently? While you've cloistered yourself, it seems I've been stirring the waters outside your fortress." As he spoke, deeper realizations washed over him. Each word was a brushstroke on the canvas of his evolving identity. He wasn't just advocating for a collaboration, he was showcasing his maturity, his growth into someone unafraid to face conflict. This was a fundamental shift, a realization that progress wasn't often linear, but rather a labyrinth filled with sharp turns and daunting challenges. There was a subtle shift in the energy of the crowd. He could sense them leaning in, a wave of support igniting behind him. With that support, Mike understood he was crafting something solid, a foundation forged from the fire of adversity. He had stumbled over the blocks of fear and doubt, but had refused to be buried by them. This was liberation. "Let's set aside our differences and work together," he proposed, his voice firm. "We have a unique opportunity to bring fresh ideas to a project that desperately needs revitalization. Alone, it's easy to drown, but together we can innovate." Mike noticed Brad's brow twitch in contemplation, as if he were weighing the truth of Mike's words against his ego. The internal battle within Brad was manifesting, and with each second that passed, the outline of their potential partnership became clearer. "Why would I partner with you?" Brad finally asked, frowning as though the concept physically pained him. "Because that's the smartest choice," Mike countered, feeling an unyielding sense of clarity. "Understand this, Brad. It's not about our pasts. It's about the potential of what we can accomplish. If we want to swim, we need to embrace the struggle of the tide together." A flicker of uncertainty crossed Brad's face, revealing a crack in the armor of his bravado. Could he actually entertain the idea of merging their strengths? The question hung in the air, fracturing the stalemate with a pulse of boiling energy. Mike's heart raced. What if Brad refused? What if he insisted on remaining in his isolated fortress? The fear of rejection niggled at him, yet he clenched his jaw and stood firm. It was time to anchor his resolve. "Brad," he pressed gently, his tone shifting to sincerity. "This is an invitation for you as well. Accepting collaboration doesn't mean admitting weakness. It signifies strength in recognizing we can achieve more when we build on each other's strengths." For the first time, Brad seemed to recognize the fragile nature of the status quo they both had inhabited. Mike could see him wrestling between pride and the possible gain from unity. As eyes remained glued to this confrontation, Mike understood. This was just the beginning. He had proven that he wasn't afraid to challenge norms and expectations, both his own and those imposed by others. The journey was unfolding before him, filled with both potential perils and profound opportunities. Yet, as the metaphorical dice turned, the next move would come at a cost. Would Brad choose to stand with him or go down defiantly alone? The edginess of anticipation crackled around them, a promise of transformation hanging delicately in the balance. The following moment would define not just their project, but Mike's entire professional path. Would this risk lead to collaboration infused with creativity, or would it entrench them deeper into rivalry? That moment loomed, and Mike braced, knowing action would follow. He was ready to discover who he could truly become. With the air ripe for change, Mike felt the weight of the moment resting squarely on his shoulders. The crowd's anticipation surged like waves crashing against a rocky shore, echoing back to him his own trepidations and hopes. Deep within, he sensed that he was no longer standing at the edge of indecision. He was ready to reclaim his narrative, a narrative woven from vulnerability and strength. Let's hash out our goals, he insisted, forcing focus back onto the matter at hand. Let's define what success looks like for both of us, not this petty rivalry, but a collaboration that expands our perspectives. Brad, caught slightly off guard by Mike's assertiveness, paused, the fire in his eyes dimming momentarily. The crowd seemed to lean in as if waiting for a shift. Every second felt like an eternity as Mike sensed the tension shift slightly. Perhaps it was the weight of his words finally breaking the surface silence that had hung like a pall over them. "No one is denying your hard work today, Mike," Brad eventually replied, though his words dripped with skepticism. "You're innovative, but are you ready to carry the workload that comes with it?" That single question struck Mike, but not with fear. It ignited a fierce pride within him. Without hesitating, he thrust his shoulders back, defiance igniting his features. "I've spent my entire life in that garage solving problems with my hands. I can't just idly create ideas. I build, adapt, and engage. Working alongside you, I can contribute an experience that textbook theories simply can't match." But this wasn't just about proving his worth. It was about fostering dialogue, igniting the possibilities of newfound alliances. "Imagine what we could achieve. A blend of your formal education and my hands-on ingenuity. We could create something groundbreaking." The crowd remained enraptured, moving in the wake of Mike's convictions, the energy in the atmosphere shifting between tension and promise. It felt as if they were witnessing a significant moment, not for the rivalry itself, but for Mike's journey into self-realization. This prelude didn't just reveal weaknesses. It unveiled a tenacity and creativity that thrived amidst challenge. Brad's skepticism began to ebb away, revealing hesitance instead. Mike felt the shift, and it was invigorating. The notion of collaboration was flickering in Brad's eyes as Mike continued. "We've been misusing each other as fuel for our ambitions for too long. Let's take this chance, turn rivalry into synergy. Together we can craft something that celebrates both our strengths." "Are you really suggesting we team up?" Brad finally asked, revealing astonishment laced with disbelief. "Yes," Mike asserted, fueled by a conviction that steadied his voice. "This is an opportunity for both of us to transcend our individual limitations." A ripple of interest swept through the crowd. They weren't just onlookers, they were witnesses to a transformative evolution that, regardless of the outcome, was already changing Mike. As he maintained eye contact with Brad, he sensed the boundaries of his previous fears beginning to dissolve, unable to thwart the momentum he had built. For a brief moment, Brad seemed to wrestle with his thoughts, processing what had just been laid before him. The visibility of that internal struggle thrilled Mike. He realized that they were entering unknown territory, where both could redefine success on their terms. Finally, Brad's shoulders relaxed and a cautious grin appeared on his face. "All right, let's map out the next steps together. If you're willing to level up, I'm in." A wave of relief washed over Mike, but beyond that relief was a profound satisfaction. They had moved beyond infighting, beyond mere competition. It was a recognition of the individual strengths within collaboration, a harmony of innovation and opportunity. As applause erupted from the crowd, he felt the chains of self-doubt shatter, just as they had for his father many years before. That day, standing tall together with Brad marked not just a professional turning point, but a personal milestone, an unmistakable victory over self-imposed limitations. Mike had conquered the specter of inadequacy and embraced his identity as a creator and problem solver. Days unfurled, bringing newfound recognition as the project blossomed. Engineers and designers alike sought him out to integrate his inventive designs. His ability to fuse experience with creativity caught the eye of industry professionals, opening doors he never dreamed possible. His father's legacy continued to guide Mike as he took the helm of more successful projects, not just engineering marvels, but initiatives bursting with innovation. With each passing day, Mike's confidence solidified, flourishing into a sustainable career that finally reflected his aspirations. This was his time, his personal achievement. The man who once felt like merely a mechanic had become an influential voice in the industry. His synthesis of real-world experience with newfound collaboration galvanized him. Mike became not just a testament to individual resilience, but a beacon of hope for those who believed themselves beneath the achievements of others. His story unfolded as a reminder that genuine growth doesn't arise from either-or paradigms, but through symbiosis, an intricate tapestry woven from threads of courage, creativity, and collaboration. In this powerful reflection of transformation, he became a symbol of what true innovation could accomplish when driven by collaboration over competition. Mike had rewritten his story, shaping a future he could finally own, proud of the legacy he would pass down to others, a story that would resonate beyond failure and encapsulate the spirit of perseverance. Now it's your moment. You need to subscribe now to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive emotional stories that inspire transformation. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Seriously, you make a difference. Comment with your reactions and theories about Mike's incredible journey. And share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness this empowering conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share this message.